is in the rear view, right now on a mission, trying to stay the course on this road to redemption. Giving up seems tempting, but no need, cause I got you and you got me. A little UNITY will get us by through the storm and the rain. I'll be by your side. Look alive, the best has yet to come. Just some words of wisdom, plenty more. I know you've been looking for a breakthrough, trying our best to make do. Every day is something new, but change gon' come. Oh yes, it's true.
Hi, welcome to Redeemed and Restored podcast. I'm your host, Mike Noland, and with me today, I was pretty excited about this one. It's a friend of mine that I've known pretty much since birth, and her name is Anna Kay. Say what's up, Anna.
Hello. Hi.
I'm super excited. We were talking before and catching up because I think the last time I saw you, I was 12 years old, and we were living at your house. I slept on the couch in the living room at a very awkward time in my life where we ended up kind of homeless, I think really was the gist of it. And yeah, I remember having to start, I think I went to like Bonita Vista Junior High at that time. And that just like another school, one of many. And it was a trip, but I haven't seen you in forever. So I'm really stoked to talk to you about your story, talk to you about what God's done in your life. We chatted about it a little bit, but I'm stoked to get into it. So why don't you just kind of introduce yourself, whatever you want to say, just real quick, and then we'll dive into your story.
Yeah, cool. So, hi, Anna Kay here. Yeah, I was pretty pissed about that when like a herd of boys moved in and like but
There was four of us, and it was like
it's
not like we rolled light.
babies.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was crazy. Yeah.
Gosh,
Sorry about that.
no, my household was always filled with interesting characters.
I'm
But
sure. Yeah.
yeah. So it's wild. I'm so happy to be here. After like we have similar kind of upbringing, shared
Yep.
memories, if you will,
Yeah.
and then to find out that we both kind of like went sideways and now like here to tell a sober story. I love it.
So cool. That's awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. And yeah, it's been cool to catch up even before this, but I'm excited to walk through your story and your testimony, and I know it will help people because that's really the main reason why I started the show. Originally, the first time I went to rehab, which was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I actually went through the Salvation Army program because my younger brother Daniel was the intake coordinator, and I had this idea to want to start this back then, and I really wanted to start it, but at that time, I couldn't really openly talk about my stuff. I was still super closed off, and I was super prideful, and I wasn't there yet, and I relapsed a couple of times after that. So it was something that was put on my heart a long time ago because when I first started getting sober, I didn't think it was possible, and then I would hear stories that people would tell about their life, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like that sounds just like me, and if something like that can happen for that person, maybe there's a chance. It would give me a little bit of hope. And so that's what I hope happens through these stories, is that it helps people that it needs to help. And we can leave that in the hands of God because he'll put it in front of the right people. But that's really it. And I'm sure your story will help somebody, and it's meant for somebody out there. And we just don't even know who that is yet. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I know the answers to some of these questions, but why don't we talk about what life was like growing up when you were a kid? Was God in the home? When did you get to the point where you started using, and where you can really look back and be like, all right, that's when it started to get bad, and I realized that I possibly started to have a problem at that point. So start there, and then we'll keep going.
Sure. Yeah. So, my earliest memory was actually like church in my living room.
Hmm.
So God was definitely present in my home, and it was just a way of life. But I think for me, and I never doubted the existence of God, and I always like felt connected to Jesus Christ. But at some point in my upbringing, like when we moved away from the church that I knew you from, right? When I
Right.
was 11 or 12, we went to this big church, and my mom
Hmm.
wanted part of the music there. And that's when things started shifting for me in terms and it's just an awkward phase, right? You're becoming a
Hmm.
teenager, 12, 13.
Yep.
And there in my home specifically, like, I don't know, there was, like I said, we always had people living with us. It was kind of a strange upbringing to begin with, but, when we moved to that church, I just, like, I had so many questions, and I felt like my questions were always dismissed, and that, like, led me to, like, a little bit of resentment towards the people and the church,
Hmm.
and I don't know, rock and roll and, like, this idea of drugs they were introduced, and it was, like, kinda like love at first love at first moment. It was a way to clearly escape and feel like I belonged somewhere. I never felt
Hmm.
like I belonged anywhere.
Right.
Drugs offered me that sense of, like, just not caring and being free,
Hmm.
and it was how I found my people
Yep.
because I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere, and I think that that's just part of it. But,
Yep.
when did it really start becoming bad? Like, when I was young, I felt like I was always able to walk away from things, like, when my friends started getting into meth, and, like, I like to say I had a season of meth.
Meth season. Yeah.
It was a season because,
It's
like,
good that it was a season because if not,
I I'm very grateful, I'm very grateful.
stuff's nasty.
But when I started, like, noticing, like, just all the infighting between my friends and the moment I saw my buddy, like, yank this old lady's purse off her body, I was like, "Y'all are crazy," and then people started going to prison, and I'm like, "That life is not for me." So I
Nope.
walked
Yep.
away from it, like, I don't have a drug problem, look at me, I'm walking away. But,
Right.
um but even at that young age, I always had that sense of, like, some is never enough. I always want more, 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 more. So that addiction mindset was always there. And that's like with sugar, like anything. I'm like, more is
I
better.
gotcha. Yeah. Right. Yeah. If some
But
is good, more has got to be better.
it's
Yeah.
gotta be.
Definitely.
It's gotta be.
Gotta be.
So,
Yeah. Let's
so
find
that
out.
was always in there.
Yep.
Um, but it wasn't really where it became problematic for me. I was in my 30s, mid 30s,
Hmm.
and by this time, like, I had a kid very young. I graduated from college. I got my teaching credential. I'm working, but in my 30s, I'm, like, walked away from, like, most of my drug usage, and then I was introduced to pain pills, right? So,
Hmm.
and because they were, like, prescription, I'm like, "Oh, well, this is a way to kinda, like, get away with something that's not illegal." I mean,
Hmm.
technically it was because they weren't prescribed to me, but, um,
They're prescribed to somebody.
they were prescribed to my husband at the time, so it was fine, and man, that was, like, in the time, like, right before, like, things got real strict, like the opiate
Hmm.
crackdown where
I remember.
I mean he had a doctor by the name of Doctor Golden, and I look back at that and I think that's hilarious because literally he would bring home bags and bags of Oxycontin like that like would supply both of us and my
That's
life got dark
crazy.
real quick. Yeah. And he comes from a family of pharmacists, so he was able to talk all the lingo and like just like I don't know, dude. But
That is that's
it was
nutty. I had a doctor, I called him Dr. Feelgood when I lived in Florida for a little while. It was when it got really bad. And he
yeah.
would write me anything I wanted, and I could
Yeah.
walk in and be like, I even stopped making up stories. I'm like, I took them
Right.
all. And he would be like, all right, here,
Uh,
okay to fill early. And that was when you could actually go to multiple
exactly.
pharmacies, even if, as long as you didn't use insurance and be okay. I had scripts at, I don't know, every, every pharmacy in the Orlando area. It was crazy of all types. So I get that. But yeah, Oxycontin, that stuff is, no good. I mean, it's good when you start using it, and then it's no good real quick. So
Real
that's
quick.
crazy that he could get you a plethora of it. So I'm sure that turned out great. You guys did fine, and then
It was
everything worked out,
fantastic.
and
Yeah.
we're good. All right, end of story, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I remember the first time I was kicking and I did not know what was happening to me. Like, even with all my previous drug use, I had never experienced anything like that. And I remember distinctly my husband at the time, he's looking over me, he's like laughing. He's like, "Oh, you're kicking, you're withdrawing. You just need to take more." And I was
Wow.
what the he like,
Yeah.
so so from that experience, like, I mean, it was a good 5 years, and I got desperate enough that, I found help. Like, I got on, like, medical detox, and after, like, 5 years of, like, real hardcore opiate addiction, like, eating handfuls of these things a a day, right? To not be sick, like, you're not even getting high anymore, right? You're just, like, trying to maintain,
Mm-hmm.
I got help to get off the opiates, and he
Okay.
eventually did as well. But
Okay.
it was some dark times for sure, and, that in and of itself basically destroyed my marriage. I was like, I just going through that
Mm-hmm.
and feeling like, I blamed him a lot for that too.
Okay.
But once I got off the pills, though, it was like, well, there's always the drink, the socially acceptable drink. You know? Like, "Hey, we do this to, like, network," and,
Right.
it was really hard for me to accept ever that I was an alcoholic because alcohol was never my drug of choice. That was, like, my least favorite drug of all
Mm-hmm.
the drugs I could take.
Yep.
Uh, but once I got off the opiates, and I was a responsible member of society, I was like, that's the drug that slipped in, and at this point in my life, it's like, for those of you, like, out there, like, that know what opiate addiction is like, and then alcohol addiction, by the end of, like, hardcore alcoholism, you almost don't know which is worse, like, the kick of heroin, or I'm not really a heroin user, but opiates, OxyContin, or
Oxycontin's probably worse
it's
than
it's
heroin.
hardcore. It's
Yeah.
hardcore.
I've come off that. I've come off heroin. Look at me.
Okay,
I've
so
come off fentanyl. So fentanyl is pretty brutal, but it's like really bad for like 2 to 3 days. Heroin is a little bit longer where you're like withdrawing for like 7 days, and it's kind of brutal in the beginning, but you can feel it getting better, which helps when you're kicking because you're like, at least I'm starting to get better. But oxys, man, it was that, and methadone really, really sucked too. That was no fun. So I've tried it all, but oxys, those were really, really
brutal.
rough. Yeah, that and
Yeah.
benzodiazepines. When I came off Klonopin, that was pretty brutal. But
Uh,
I've alcohol and benzo, so alcohol and like Xanax or whatever, are the only two types of withdrawals you can die
yes.
from.
Yep.
So alcohol, I heard, could be pretty brutal. So you, through like your youth, when you guys switched to a different church around that age, you really just kind of felt disconnected from that, didn't get the types of answers, felt dismissed, and started moving into a party phase of your life. So would you say that you really started using at that early age just as, I think you said, an escape, to feel comfortable in your own skin, a little bit of both, or where do you think? Was there anything like crazy traumatic that happened, or was it really just like, I'm not feeling this, and this makes me feel like comfortable, plus it gives me an escape? Where could you pinpoint like the main thing that kind of started you on a using pattern when you were
Yeah.
a teenager?
You know, I in terms of like trauma or like something traumatic, it I don't think I experienced anything that was, like, terribly out of the norm for what, like, kids go through, like,
Mm-hmm.
I was bullied, like, I had a rough time at school and, like,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, and it was just a matter of, like, just not fitting in, and then, like, with my home life and with the church,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm, like, thinking or expecting there to be some sort of, like, solution. I didn't feel like I ever got that,
Yep.
right? Didn't feel like I got solution or answers, or, like, there was no soft landing spot, and, like, yeah, so, like, my first drug, weed, I used
Me
to
too.
laugh. Yeah, I used to laugh, like, the gateway drug. I'm
It
like,
really is though. Everybody I talk to, it's like the first thing I did. I started smoking weed when I was 12, and it's like,
"No."
so did I.
Straight
And then
up,
all
and
of a
then
sudden I was 14 smoking crack, and it's like, what? And I started with a little weed. I talked to one guy though. This is funny. It's like my 8th episode. My buddy Charles, his first drug was crack, and it was with his uncle. So like his uncle stopped on the way home, picked up some crack, and I'm like, that was your opener, man? That is crazy. Usually I hear like weed or, I drank for the first time and whatever. So I'm right there with you. I started the
Yeah,
same way. So
I think
so it
I'm
really is, kids, it's a gateway drug. Don't smoke weed. It's legal everywhere, so I don't even know.
I,
It's kind of like as socially acceptable as alcohol. But all right. And so you mentioned something that I had similar experiences. So when I was a teenager, I did have some traumatic stuff happen when I was younger, with some sexual abuse when I was young, coupled with and it was somebody at my parents' church, which that made it even funner. That's not a word, but I used it. And that coupled with just crazy moving around when it was before we ended up down at your house and like school after school after school. So, that kind of drove me into wanting to use it. But the same reason, it was like I didn't feel like I fit in with anybody. I started new schools all the time, and it helped with that. And then there was the escape where it was just like I
um,
felt the same way. I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody at whatever church we were at. How could I talk to my pastor parents about what had happened? And I just felt super detached. But I also had a season with meth in my teen years, and I stopped and walked away from it because I'm like, this is getting crazy.
yeah,
And I was starting to see some crazy stuff, and my
mm,
my best friend was like, dude, you look horrible, like you need to stop, you've lost a ton of weight and all that stuff. It's probably about 6 months, and I was able to walk away then. And then it got to a point where I wasn't, at a certain point. So you got married, and it sounds like, well, you already said it. You had a kid young, so you're a young mom, but you were successful. You graduated college, you worked, and so it's really easy. It was easy for me when I was successful working and raising kids and coaching sports to like just be in like this huge state of denial that I never really had a problem because I have a house and I have a job, and so I'm good. I never had a drug problem until I ran out of money. So
right.
so but the opiates, that really got me, and I drank because it
Hmm.
made the opiates stronger. I would take large amounts, copious amounts of Vicodin or Oxys or whatever I could get my hands on. And if I had a couple drinks, man, it would do that. But let's talk about after. So you got off the opiates, which is awesome, the
Yeah,
Oxys, and then you talked about alcoholism. So what did
yeah,
that look like? How long did that carry on? And you mentioned it being pretty brutal. What did that look like after the
yeah,
oxys?
yeah. So I'm gonna be 48 next month. Okay, and so the alcoholism for me, basically in my marriage, so I stayed, I was like, we're gonna make this work, but it was like
Hmm.
5 years of the opiates, and then like I said, shortly after that, just alcohol like took over, and it progressed rather quickly, because like I said, I was not a drinker. I was like the kind of person that after like I had a 3 drink limit in my 20s. Like you knew if I drank more than 3 drinks, I'm puking. Like no, thank you. So how do I become an alcoholic, right? That was, like, mind-boggling for me, but I'm competitive. My husband was a drinker, and I'm like, more is always better, so I'm gonna keep up with you, and so when it goes from, like, uh, a glass of wine, but you know those big cups that
Hmm.
fit a
Oh yeah.
whole bottle? You fit a whole bottle? That's like a glass of wine is a whole bottle
Right.
of wine. And then you start putting on the pounds, you're like, "Oh, I know, like, we're gonna drink vodka." So, really, it
Right.
was like, when I'm just, like, drinking straight vodka, then it just progressed real quick, but I was still in denial. I'm like, "This guy's got the problem, it's not me." And, it got to the point, we're both teachers, by the way, and, he stayed home from work, like, one too many times, and I just, like, drew the line in the sand. I'm like, "If I come home and you have vodka in your hand, I'm done. I'm never coming back. Like, this is over."
Hmm.
And and I got so freaked out, like, I came home at lunch, and sure enough, he's already passed out, and so that was it. I left.
Oh
But
wow.
that's his story to tell, which he'd gladly tell, but my story is once I left him, um that's when my alcoholism, really I couldn't blame it on anybody, blame it on anyone anymore,
Yeah.
and I found myself, like, alone, um, drinking a fifth, and I'm like, the fifth is empty, and I'm like, I need more, and I'm like, what's going on? And so from about 2017, so I'm like 40. So it was a 7-year battle of me knowing I have a problem,
Right.
trying to get sober before I
Mm-hmm.
could get any traction of sobriety. And how bad did it get? I mean, I would wake up and I'd have to drink to get through my day. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm drinking on the job.
Yeah.
I drinking to stave off the shakes. I am like, it was I I'd find myself gosh, there was a year when, I can't even, like, count the times that I was either in the ER or,
Mm-hmm.
uh, detox, or, I was 5150, like, I'm gonna lose my mind, and, did a 30-day inpatient. The day I got out of my 30-day inpatient, what's my first stop?
The
The
liquor
fridge.
store.
Of
Yeah.
course, of
Yeah.
course. So
I get it.
I was in that cycle for quite some time, and, like, so when I say, like, from 40, I think around 41 was when, like, I started really, like, crumbling, all those hospital visits. I think I visited my first AA meeting at that time,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't until the last couple years of my life that, like, I was able to get any traction in being a sober person. So,
Yeah,
hope
that's
that answers your question.
it does. Yeah. It's tough. Denial is crazy because the first time, so I didn't go to rehab or step foot really in any recovery until I was 38 years old. And really at that time, I was in a bit of a pickle because I had worn out from my rest in
Yeah,
another state, coupled with the fact that my marriage had ended. And so that kind of took place. But I remember even it took me a little while to wrap my arms around the fact that, like, yeah, once the other person's gone, you really don't have anyone to blame but yourself. It's really
yeah,
easy because I don't like to talk too much about her stuff. It's like her stuff, but we drank together, we popped
right.
pills together, we did all that stuff together. And it was really easy for me to be like, you're the problem. And it was really easy for her to be like, I'm the problem. She like
100%.
every issue in her life was me. And this was a dual kind of thing. So it wasn't just like, I don't know. We were both in a bad spot, but it was an interesting place to get to where it's like, well, now it's just me, and I'm still kind of a disaster, and it doesn't really matter. Who's around, I'm going to find a way to mess this up pretty tough. But I stayed in denial for a pretty considerable period of time. I even went to rehab and was like, I'm not like these people. There's no way. And at the end of it, I'm like, I'm never going to come back to this place again. I'm going to stay sober, and I don't need this. And 6 months later, there I was, probably using worse drugs than I'd ever used in my entire life because I was super, super prideful. So let's talk about that. So you said that, like, until the last couple years, and I know we talked before we got started about it, but let's talk about what it took to get from that endless cycle of denial and drinking, because I've been there too, where it's like every night you're stopping at the liquor store, even if you have liquor at home, because you don't want to run out and not be able to get more. It, like, just becomes a
Yes,
habitual pattern of your day. And then when you try to stop, and, like, then you're thinking about, man, if I get home and there's no alcohol, and then I
yeah,
decide that I want some, and I haven't stopped, and then it's really easy just to stop again. And I would, I totally understand where you're coming from. How'd you get from that cycle, that pattern, where it's a very difficult thing to break when you're stuck in that pattern, to finally the point where you're like, man, I've got a problem. I need some help. Or you talked to me about that spiritual experience that you had with
mhm,
the Holy Spirit and all that. Let's kind
yeah,
of talk about how you transitioned out of that pattern to where you're at today.
sure. So if I could just, like, back up just a little bit, though, and, like, say, so, like, I had gone from, owning a 3-story house with my husband, to leaving, to living, like, in my brother's she shed, to entering sober living, and so how I got to this place of sobriety, um, I was bouncing around. I was in my second sober living situation, and
Mm-hmm.
keep in mind, like, I'm still a responsible, like, member of society. I'm still working, like,
Right.
through all of this, like, so my mind is
Mm-hmm.
tricking me into thinking, like, it's even though I'm, like, literally living in sober living, but I had just gotten kicked out of my second sober living.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I all the things that I possessed, like, could fit in one garbage bag, okay? I don't know how I'm gonna, like, get a place to live in San Diego where rent is astronomical. I'm like, because I haven't been budgeting my
Mm-hmm.
money at all, right? It's
Yep.
all going to liquor, and so I was basically homeless. Everything I own's in a garbage bag. I show up on my brother's doorstep again, and I'm like, I have nowhere to go. And he lets me, like, sleep in his, like, RV. And it was in that state of mind that I'm just like, it was desperation. And all this while still I'm going to AA. I have a sponsor and I can't get it together at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I was invited to a retreat um that it was AA or, like, a group of AA people, and they go out to this monastery to hang out with monks for, like, a couple days at the beginning of every year. It's an annual thing that they do in January.
Nice.
um I remember, like, I was even drunk at the time, and I called my sponsor. I'm like, I can't go to this retreat. And she's like, girl, you need to go. And she's also, you need to drop on your knees. And that was another thing that she did that I think, like, led me up to this point of success, because I finally got to the place where it was sheer desperation, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I dropped to my knees because I'm like, well, I pray all the time, but there's something about the physical act of dropping to my knees
Yeah.
that really did start the transformation in me. So even before I could get sober, I was doing, like, 90 and 90, how people do
Mm-hmm.
this meetings in 90 days, and dropping to my knees every day, not feeling connected, but I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. My
Mm-hmm.
sponsor says to do it. And that night before I went to the retreat, she's like, you're gonna go. And she's like, and you need to drop to your knees right now. And I did it. And I was like, all right, God, like, just whatever, get me to this retreat. Like, and at that retreat, there was something profound that happened. And I don't know why it landed on me the way it did, but we were all in a group. So we'd hang out with this monk, and his name was Father Francis. And I got my Saint Francis medallion on right here because for a lot of reasons, but one of them is because that guy's impact on me.
That's cool.
Um, yeah, but he was like, okay, he opened it up. He'd give us these little talks, and he opened it, and it's like, okay, do you guys have any questions? And I'm like, all right, this guy has dedicated his whole life to God. He talks to God every day, right? In silent meditation. I'm like, okay, so so Mr. Monk. I'm with a bunch of these AA people over here who say that a God of your understanding, right? You got to believe in a higher power, a God of your understanding. I was like, so where I come from, like, I even shared this with my mom before, by the way. I'm like, I was getting all excited about AA, and they're like, oh, well, be careful. That's the devil if you make up your God, right? Like, so how could it be God of your understanding? And I'm like, Mom, I'm like, just try to get sober. Like, I'm trying to figure this out. And she's like, there's only one God. And so I asked this monk, I said, Monk, what do you make of all these AA people saying, like, a God of your understanding? What do you think of that? And all my AA people started chiming in. I was like, shh, no, I need to hear it from him.
Want to hear from the monk?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said to me something along the lines of, like, he's like, a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life, and I'm not so concerned with what they call God. what I understand is that God wants a relationship with all of us. And the important thing is that you seek that relationship. And to me, that right there answered so many questions in my mind because like my whole life, I'm like, yeah, but like,
Hmm.
what are you telling me? All these other people that like have a different word for God are just gonna go to hell automatically. I don't buy that. Doesn't make sense to me. And for whatever reasons, those words just they landed the way they needed to land. And then later that evening, um, like he had office hours, right? And I didn't want to go to his office hours, but my friends are like, you gotta go. You gotta go talk to the monk. And I'm like, whatever. So I go and I'm like, okay, so okay, monk, like you said I could call God whatever. I'm like, but like Jesus, right? He's like, yeah, yeah, I talked to Jesus. And I'm like, okay, so let's talk about this. And he said, the way I see it is, I'm obviously paraphrasing, but Jesus is like, and it says it in the Bible, right? The way, the truth, and the light, like no one gets to the kingdom except through me. But he put it into these terms of like, it's what's the word I'm looking for? Like a direct line, right? So when you talk to Jesus, which I always have my whole life, like that's just like the direct line. You're not getting like put on hold, like, you're that's how you can really connect. And after that he prayed with me,
Hmm.
and when I left his office, that's when I had like a full on Holy Spirit moment. Like I fell to the ground, prostrate, face down,
Hmm.
sobbing,
Wow.
and like I was like shaking. And I don't even like tell a lot of people this because it's like, whoa, you had that burning bush moment. I'm like, no, literally I did. And I went back into the room, and they were my people were in the middle of their AA meeting, and I sat down, and like I could feel the weight. I could feel it being lifted from my body.
That's so cool.
It was insane, and like it wasn't insane. It was like it's beautiful, like truly beautiful moment. And up until that moment, like I could not get sober. And from that moment on, like I was like kind of like the pink cloud. I was floating for the rest of that weekend.
Hmm.
And when I got home, I moved into a new sober living. And I remember just sitting in that sober living on the couch. Nobody else was in there at that time. Moved all my stuff in. And I was like, this is the first time in my life that I don't feel alone. Like I could tell that God was with me and God had removed my obsession,
Yeah.
and like, you know, um, and I was able to stay sober for 365 days after that.
That's incredible.
And I had never been able to get past like 3 months before in
Hmm.
my life, you
Yeah.
know, and
That is so cool. And it's funny. It's I don't know if it's the right word to say it's funny, but it is funny how God works because like you didn't want to go, right? And your friends pushed you to go. You were still drinking and using or whatever, drinking. And so you're just like he didn't, and then you get to sit down with this monk and you ask him this question, and the way that he answers it just hits. And then all of a sudden, all the guilt, all the shame, all the stuff just falls off. And like our stories are so similar. It's funny because I white knuckled it. I joked in my testimony that I was like, I couldn't even rub 2 clean days together. And I was always thinking about it. And I could go to meetings and I could go to AANACR. It didn't really matter. I'd go to the Bible studies at the church and I'm trying so hard to like, I know what I was doing was wrong. So I'm trying to correct it, but it wasn't working. And then all of a sudden, I was super standoffish about anything supernatural, especially after our little traveling ministry stint. And
Mhm.
so I'm in this service and it's kind of going that way. And I'm like, like I'm going to sit in the back and I'm good. And then I get called to the front and the guy says stuff to me that I was just praying about like the day before, the days before, and I ended up on the floor too, face down, couldn't even stand up, crying, soaked the floor in tears. 15 minutes, couldn't get up, and then
Yeah.
even when I got up, I couldn't stop crying, and I felt the same way. All the guilt, all the shame, all the stuff. Years of trying, all of a sudden, it was just the thought of using was gone. I haven't used now in almost 2 years, and I don't think about it. And I've had bad stuff happen, but I don't. The instant thought isn't like I'm gonna go get high, which it used to be. That was my reaction to anything good, bad, or anything. Was I'm gonna go get high, and that's really cool. And I think it's awesome. That it's a monk. That's fun. I think that's cool. And I know I've been to AA and stuff too, and I've had people on the show, and they've had tons of time, and they've gotten sober, and I think it's great. Anytime somebody can get into something and they're not out using actively, and they can seek God. I'm the same as you. God's always been Jesus to me. I've never really had an issue with that, being raised in it, my parent, all that kind of stuff. I walked away from it because of some stuff that happened, but ultimately that's who I've always known it to be as well. But mine was a radical encounter just like yours, and now I'm not the same person that I used to be. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, therefore if anyone is in Christ, they're a new creation, the old is gone, the new is here. And that's what I feel like happened, and that's what it sounds like happened with you too, which is really, really cool. So you've been clean now, sober. I say clean a lot. I spend a lot of time in the rooms of
Yeah.
Narcotics Anonymous.
Sure.
So uh, for over a year, and it was after this experience, and so you've moved into a clean and sober. Is that still where you're at? Like, how are things? How are things now? What does life look like now? It's a year later, and how are things going?
I have a beautiful apartment that I pay rent for.
Nice. Yeah.
It's mine.
I've lived in my fair share of clean and sober, so that's
Yeah.
awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, and I did stay sober for I was in that last sober living.
Mhm.
That's where I got my year of sobriety, you know.
Cool.
I was blessed with amazing roommates, which is not always the case, as
Nope.
you know. Uh,
Yep. It's the, like, wheel of death sometimes. You're like, "Really? And he's in
and
my
even
room?"
yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
could go off on those stories for sure, but
Yeah.
but no, I have an I mean, like, I am so grateful for the smallest things, you know, like when I got this apartment and I'm so excited, I want to show everybody, but like people that are like my colleagues, they're like, oh, cool. You like have a 1 bedroom apartment. And I'm like, you don't understand. This
Yeah.
is everything. Like I've installed this bookcase over here.
Nice.
I'm
Looks
so
good.
stoked.
Yeah, nice work.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just dialed in, it's mine, and it I've never used or drank in this home, you know, so
That's
things like
cool.
that, like, it's beautiful, and, like, with my job, like, being sober, um, continually and, like, the opportunities that I have with, like I mean, I have such an important, uh, job to be working with the youth, and
Mhm.
they're part of, like, the reason that I even, like, held on and, like, got through a lot. I think it could have been way worse for me, but, like, I really had that as something I was like, "I gotta get better," but, they weren't enough, you know what I mean?
No, yeah, I get it.
When you're an addict, you can't do it for anybody outside of yourself,
No.
um,
Nope.
no matter how much you want.
Yeah.
Um, so I just wanna say, like, coming back to, like, in AA, like, the 3rd step, and that was, like, such the block for me, but um
Turning your will and your life over to the care of
thank you.
God as you understand him.
That's
Yeah.
it, and it
Yep.
wasn't until I could get that component of those steps that things could change for me, and I think, you know, people in AA, a lot of people are able to just kinda, like, breeze through it, and I don't know, like,
Mhm.
they lean into the community of it. I still struggle with community. I don't know. Maybe it was all that communal living growing up that I'm like, "Ah."
Random people showing up with 4
Yeah,
kids to live in your house, and you're like, "Oh, yay. Yay, yay
no
for me."
no community.
There was one
Well,
time when we moved to Seattle where we actually lived with people who lived with people. That was ridiculous.
oh, fun.
It was other traveling ministers that were staying with people, and
Yes.
now we're literally, and I'm like, dude, I don't even know where we are. And why are these people letting us stay here? And we had 4 and they had 3 kids. So it's like 7 kids deep at these people's houses. I'm like, you guys are crazy.
Right?
But yeah, I remember the time staying at your guys' house really well. And I remember one time you actually stood up for me on the bus. So thanks for that.
Did
Because
I?
somebody was picking on me, and you came up and talked crap, and they stopped. Because that was a rough year. I had my parents, when we moved to Idaho originally with the Salvation Army when I was like 7, they skipped me a grade because the education system there was a lot different in southern Idaho than it was in San Diego. And I hated it because I was always younger than everybody. And then on top of it, starting a new school every 27 seconds, and you're just like way further behind. It was brutal. So I was like 12 going into 7th grade or 6th, whatever grade I was in there. And yeah, that was rough. Something you said that just popped back into my mind, but you said you had your burning bush moment. And I love that because I talk about it a lot on this show, specifically because I, the word redeemed, right? I did a lot of studies on it, and I eventually landed in this commentary in the book of Isaiah, in Isaiah 41, and it talked about how the word redeemed actually went back to the Exodus story, and how it obviously means that Jesus ransomed us, redeemed us because of what he did on the cross, all that awesome stuff that Jesus did for us. The word means that, but in the book of Isaiah, it actually relates back to the story of Exodus and how God rescues his people and provides an environment for their faithfulness to him to flourish. And so I talk a lot about how that's really what happened for me. I had this deliverance moment where God literally rescued me from my Egypt, and had that burning bush moment, right? Like Moses, or that Mount Sinai moment where everything changed and everything was different after that point. And it sounds like it's crazy because our stories are super they really are super similar, from marriage and kids at a really young age to a really heavy opiate addiction, and then all the ebbs and flows. I ended up with all my stuff being in literally one bag at one point too. When I left Seattle, nothing came with me. The police sent me on a Greyhound bus to Los Angeles, to the Dream Center in LA, to go to rehab there when I left Seattle. Then I ended up leaving there and going to my parents in Arizona. But I lost everything, and literally everything I had in the bag wasn't even my stuff. It was like I had a pair of shoes that were too big, a pair of Vans that were like a size too big, another pair of shoes that were like 3 sizes too small, and then like a couple hoodies, couple pairs of jeans, all the wrong sizes because they wanted to give me some clothes to leave with. Because when they found me, I was in rough shape. Let's just, I was running from cops that weren't there and diving into bushes and getting covered in mud, and there I am in like no shoes, and it was bad. It was bad when they found me. So I lost everything. And I've spent some time in the same places that you have, in hospitals, because people are like, "What is wrong with this guy?" Everything. But so that's crazy. Our stories mirror each other a lot. So I'm super happy for your success, and I'm super happy. I know what that apartment means to you, because it's like, uh, I, I have a life that I don't deserve, right? So, my wife, and she put up with me through a couple relapses, and she's done the opposite of what I've done with my life. And so now I live in this awesome house where, like, I'm like, there's so much room here. And she's like, what? I'm like, I have a bathroom to myself. I was like, I was just in rehab with like 50 dudes, and like half of us cram into like one bathroom. It sucks. And I've lived with multiple people and on bunk beds and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I can leave my stuff places, and I don't have to pack it up to go. I don't have to take
Right.
a cart with all my showering stuff, like, one of those little things to go into the shower and stuff, and wear flip flops to shower, because it's like, nope. That was life for a considerable period of time. And I'm so grateful and so thankful for what God has done in my life and the people that he's put in my life. And so I know that at what I had just gone through, if I would have gotten into my own place where it's just like mine, I would have been like, man, this is the most awesome, coolest thing ever. So I love that you're grateful. I love your attitude. And I
Yeah.
think it's so cool that whatever it took, and if it was a monk, if it was random guest speakers at a Sunday night service that I went to, I've talked to other people where they have that same type of moment, and it's all different types of things. But ultimately, it comes down to the point where it just somebody spoke into your life and he said something that just hit. And really, what it is the Holy Spirit that penetrates the heart and finally gets you to that point. But I think it's really cool how it went, and it's just a testimony that uh, at any given moment, Jesus can step in and change everything because you couldn't stay sober for longer than a few months. And then you have one experience, one radical encounter with God at a monk retreat for AA, and now your life's totally different. So
And
that's so cool.
in
I have a
relations to that verse from Corinthians that you quoted,
Hmm.
my inner circle of sober women who I have kept myself close to because they're the women that I'm like, whoa, like they're sober and beautiful and smart and talented. And I've kept them close to me for the
Hmm.
7 years where I was like losing my mind, couldn't get sober. So they seen me.
Mm,
And
good friends.
after yeah, after I had that experience with the monk and my spiritual experience,
Yeah.
profound. When I came back from that retreat, they were just like, "You have changed." And they never believed me before. They're just like, "Okay." They let me hang around. They're like, "Yeah, okay, okay," and they were like, "No, no, we like, your eyes are clear." And it wasn't just because I was sober, it was like they saw, like, this light in me, and other people commented on that as well. So it's like, um, getting that outside validation, not that I was looking for it or needed it. I mean, I always wanted outside validation, let's be honest, but, like, in that moment of just knowing what I had gone through and that other people could see that as well, was
Yeah.
also so powerful,
Yeah.
And,
That's
it's
confirmation, right?
absolutely.
It's good to
Absolutely.
know that because we know the change that's happened, right? And like if you've already said it, you've struggled as long as I have. So it's like I don't think the way that I used to think. I don't like everything is really different. But when people see me now or they talk to me and they're like, wow, man, I can tell that like things are really different. It's nice. It's confirmation. And I think that that's good. And I think it's really, really cool that one, you have awesome women in your life who've stuck by you through all the ups and downs and all that. Because sometimes I've found in certain things like that, people can just kind of dismiss you until you finally get back into it, and the whole struggle in between, they'll just
Sure.
let you flail. When sometimes they need to let us flail, but it's nice to have that. So that's really cool to have mentorship, sponsorship, discipleship, whatever you want to call it. And then, yeah, the verse that you're talking about, the 2 Corinthians 5:17, you really are a new creation. The old is gone, the new is here, and you know it, and other people know it. And I think that's really cool. And we can kind of end on that note, which I think is a great one to end on because like I mentioned earlier, what I've heard just all throughout your story is that it was tough a lot of times, and there was a lot of struggles and a lot of like just trying so hard to stop doing the things that you were doing in your own strength, and then in just one instant at retreat, Jesus changed everything for you, and now here you are sitting here in your own spot with a bookcase that you installed yourself, hanging out. That's so awesome, and you've put 365 plus days together in a row, and you're surrounded by great people that are mentoring you, and you can continue to share your story and help other people. We give it away, right? It gets to that point where it's like um I can't uh I feel like I'm not doing enough. Like all I want to do is try to help people that have similar struggles to ours by just sharing what God's done in my life, because I know that if he did it for me, he can do it for you. If he did it for you, he can do it for anybody that's listening out there. So for anybody who is listening out there, if you're struggling, if you were just going through it and you don't know where to turn, you don't know what to do, I want to give you the email to the show. It's redeemed and restored podcast at gmail.com. Please email me. I'd like to get you pointed in the right direction, connected with the right person, whatever program it might be, wherever you live. Sometimes even when we start to turn and start to make the right decisions, we just need time. And I know I needed time to just spend time with God and get things back together and just work through some stuff, because I went hard at my addiction for over 30 years. So to think that it was going to be fixed in just 30 seconds was, I had another thing coming. I've had to work through a lot of stuff, but sometimes you just need help and sometimes you need time. So email the show, redeemed and restored podcast at gmail.com. And then Anna Kay, I'm just going to pray for everybody that's out there. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been so cool to catch up. And then the next time we're in San Diego, I'm going to have to hit you up and we're going to have to come say hello, at least say hi, grab coffee or something. So I'm going to pray for everybody out there. God, we just thank you for this time. We thank you for Anna Kay's story, God. We just thank you for what you did over a year ago at that retreat. And we just thank you for her willingness to hop on here and share what you've done in her life. God, I just pray that you take her story and put it out there for whoever needs to hear it, that it gets to the right person, speaks to them, and that their life is changed and it's a catalyst to their miracle, God. We just pray that you surround anybody who made a decision to turn towards Christ today and turn towards a new life with the right people that can disciple them and just point them in the right direction, whether it's a program or a church or whatever it is, God. We just pray for that, and we just thank you for this time. We thank you for all you're doing in our lives, your grace and your mercy, because I know that I desperately need it every second of every day. So we just thank you for all that in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and thank you everybody out there for hanging out with us. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and God bless.